Ancient roots, nomadic tribes, and the rise of Slavic power. The vast expanse of what is now Russia, stretching from Europe to Asia, was once home to various nomadic tribes. These tribes, such as the Scythians and Sarmatians, roamed the steppes, herding cattle and sheep. They were skilled horsemen and fierce warriors. In the Bronze Age, more settled cultures began to emerge. They left behind burial mounds and artifacts, providing evidence of their existence. Slavic tribes began to arrive in the region around the 6th century AD. They were primarily farmers and hunters living in small fortified villages. Over time, they gradually expanded their territory, moving eastwards and southwards. These Slavic tribes laid the foundation for the future Russian state. They established the basis of the language and culture that would define Russia for centuries to come. Initially, these early Slavic tribes were not unified. They were divided into numerous clans and principalities. They often engaged in conflicts amongst themselves for control of land and resources. However, they also shared a common language and culture. This shared heritage would eventually help to bind them together. The arrival of the Vikings, known as the Varangians, in the 9th century AD would prove to be a turning point in their history. These Scandinavian warriors established the Rurik dynasty, which would unite the Slavic tribes under a single rule, leading to the formation of the Kievan Rus. The Vikings arrive, Rurik, and the birth of the Rus. In the 9th century AD, Viking adventurers, known as Varangians, sailed down the rivers of Eastern Europe. They were skilled sailors and warriors, seeking trade and conquest. One Viking chieftain, Rurik, established himself in Novgorod in 862 AD. He became the ruler of the local Slavic and Finnic tribes, laying the foundation for a new political entity. This event is traditionally considered the beginning of the Rus' state, which would later evolve into Russia. Rurik's dynasty, the Rurikids, would rule the region for over 700 years. Rurik's successors expanded their territory southwards, consolidating their power. They conquered Kiev, a strategically important city on the Dnieper River, around 882 AD. Kiev became the capital of the new Rus' state, known as Kievan Rus'. The Rus adopted Christianity from the Byzantine Empire in 988 AD under Prince Vladimir the Great. This event had a profound impact on the culture and identity of the Rus. The church provided literacy and education, fostering a new cultural era. It also played a key role in the development of Russian art and architecture, leaving a lasting legacy. The Mongol yoke, a century of oppression. In the 13th century AD, a new threat emerged from the east, the Mongols. Led by the fearsome Genghis Khan, the Mongols conquered vast swaths of Asia and Europe. In 1237 AD, they invaded the Rus, sacking Ryazan, Kiev, and other major cities. The Rus' princes were forced to submit to Mongol rule. This period, known as the Mongol yoke, lasted for nearly 2 centuries. The Mongols imposed a heavy tribute on the Rus princes. They interfered in local politics and often replaced princes with their own appointees. However, they allowed the Rus to retain their own language and Orthodox Christian religion. The Mongol rule had a significant impact on Russian society. It isolated Russia from Western Europe and contributed to its economic and technological stagnation. But it also fostered a sense of unity and resilience among the Russian people. Moscow rises, from humble beginnings to a powerful principality. During the Mongol period, a new center of power emerged in the northeast, the Principality of Moscow. Moscow was initially a small and insignificant town, but its strategic location on the Moskva River made it a center of trade and commerce. The Moscow princes were shrewd and ambitious. They cooperated with the Mongols, paying tribute and gaining their favor, which allowed them to gradually expand their territory. One key figure in the rise of Moscow was Ivan Kalita, 1325 to 1340. He gained the favor of the Mongol Khan and was appointed the chief tax collector for all of the Rus. This position gave him enormous wealth and influence. He used his wealth to build churches and fortifications in Moscow, strengthening its defenses and religious significance. He also attracted settlers to the city by offering them land and privileges, further increasing its population and prosperity. In the 16th century, Ivan IV, known as Ivan the Terrible, became the first Tsar of all Russia. He was a complex and contradictory figure. Undoubtedly, he was a brilliant military strategist and a ruthless tyrant. He expanded Russian territory eastward, conquering the Khanates of Kazan, Astrakhan, and parts of Siberia. He also centralized power, diminishing the influence of the boyars, the Russian nobility. Ivan's reign was marked by widespread terror and violence. He established the oprichnina, a state policy that included a special police force to suppress and eliminate his enemies. Thousands of people were executed or exiled during his reign, including many nobles and commoners. Ivan's tyranny had a devastating impact on Russian society, leading to economic decline and depopulation in some regions. His actions undermined the rule of law and created a pervasive climate of fear and suspicion. However, his reign also laid the foundation for a centralized and autocratic Russian state. In the late 17th century, Peter the Great ascended to the throne. He was resolute in his mission to modernize Russia and integrate it into the European sphere. He embarked on the Grand Embassy, a diplomatic mission to Western Europe, to learn about shipbuilding, navigation, and other advanced technologies. Upon his return, he initiated extensive reforms, founded a new capital, St. Petersburg, on the Baltic Sea, and established a modern army and navy. Peter's reforms were transformative for Russia. He introduced Western European fashions and customs, restructured the government and the military, promoted education and science, and engaged in the Great Northern War against Sweden to secure access to the Baltic Sea. His triumph in the Great Northern War, which lasted from 1700 to 1721, solidified Russia's status as a major European power. In the 18th century, Catherine the Great ruled Russia. Born as a German princess, she married into the Russian royal family and became one of its most influential rulers. She was a patron of the arts and sciences and corresponded with Enlightenment thinkers like Voltaire and Diderot. She implemented significant reforms to improve education and healthcare, and expanded Russian territory by annexing Crimea, the Black Sea region, and parts of Poland. Catherine's reign marked a golden age for the Russian aristocracy. The court became a center of culture and sophistication, and the economy flourished, driven by exports of grain, timber, and furs. However, the vast majority of Russians remained serfs, tied to the land and subject to the whims of their landlords. The gap between the wealthy aristocracy and the impoverished serfs continued to widen, despite the era's advancements. In the 19th century, Russia faced mounting internal and external pressures. The defeat in the Crimean War from 1853 to 1856 highlighted the backwardness of the Russian military. Tsar Alexander II initiated a series of reforms aimed at modernizing the country. In 1861, he emancipated the serfs, introduced trial by jury, reformed the legal system, and promoted industrialization and railway construction. Despite these efforts, the reforms failed to meet the growing demands for change. The intelligentsia, influenced by liberal and socialist ideas from Western Europe, called for greater political freedom and social justice. The peasantry, although emancipated, remained impoverished and land-hungry, leading to widespread discontent. The rapid industrialization also gave rise to a new working class, concentrated in factories and mines, who faced harsh working conditions and low wages. In the early 20th century, Russia was engulfed in revolution. The disastrous Russo-Japanese War from 1904 to 1905 led to widespread unrest and highlighted the weaknesses of the Tsarist regime. Tsar Nicholas II was forced to make concessions, granting a constitution and establishing a parliament, the Duma, in 1905. But these reforms were too little, too late, as they failed to address the underlying issues. The outbreak of World War I in 1914 proved to be the final straw for the Tsarist regime. The war strained the Russian economy, caused severe food shortages, and exposed the incompetence of the Tsarist leadership. In February 1917, a revolution led by workers and soldiers overthrew the Tsar. A provisional government was established, but it was unable to restore order, address economic issues, or end the war. In October 1917, the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin, seized power in a coup d'etat. They established a communist dictatorship, withdrew Russia from the war through the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, and nationalized industry and land. The Russian Revolution marked a turning point in world history, leading to the end of the Romanov dynasty. It led to the creation of the Soviet Union in 1922, the first communist state, and inspired communist movements around the world.